to say a few words. Say that again. I'd like to ask Leah to say a few words, as this shir is dedicated in memory of her mother-in-law.
Thank you so much. So this year should be the revolution of my mother-in-law, after they left up the Briza. For years I've been telling my husband that this is how we can best commemorate her, because she was a very knowledgeable and educated woman who became religious at age 9 after attending Talmud Torah for maybe like half a year. And she insisted on staying religious. She had at age 10 had her own dishes in the kitchen. Her parents would leave for Shabbat on trips, and she would stay home by herself. Things like this, but it was just like unreal. And she raised us family, Shema Shabbat, Shema Ramazan family of 5 children. She was very motivated always in the Jewish education. Her parents went to public school, but she pushed herself so that she would be able to attend Stern College. So she was always learning and self-taught. She Kodesh was extremely important to her, to the point that whenever we wanted to know any of the things that as religious people we do as mitzvot anashim elamada, and we want to go, why are we going to be doing this? So every time we needed to know Tamam mitzvot, it was always she was the address. She knew why we did everything, what the different opinions were. Extremely knowledgeable and completely self-motivated. Malachos pertaining different topics of everyday Jewish life, everything, emails, and everything. She would be so proud to see how women's Jewish education has flourished, what Makan is doing for this cause. And I just want to say we truly admire her. We miss her, and I say this comes from a daughter-in-law.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And may this remove be a slope
and beautiful, beautiful. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the New Faces. Last week, first of all, the course is entitled Sister-Daughter Narratives in Torah. And the first woman that we started off talking about last week is someone who's not well known, Naama, the sister of Tuval Kayin. She's not on the hit list, the popular list. And we saw last week how the commentators grappled with why is the Torah telling us about this woman, her name, when her name no longer appears after in the story. Like, why is it significant? And we saw a whole list of different ways of approaching this woman. And we said the minute we have so many interpretations, we realize that we're dealing with a very, very difficult question. And today I want to continue on and talk about another approach to who this Naama was. There's a source sheet on the table. And I want to point out that we talked about this last week. I'm just going to reiterate it again because we're going to see it. It's going to be pronounced today that Parshat Bereshit, the beginning of the world, is something which is, there are many things there that are hard to understand. We saw last week that it could be that our story of Naama is refuting ancient mythology that believed that Naama was one of the gods or a semi-god. And that's why we're told that she was actually born, meaning God has control of her. So these are very, very mystical ideas. And today we're going to continue on. So if you take out your source sheet, we're going to go one step further. And we're going to see another approach to who Naama was. And we're going to look at the Rabbeinu Bechaya. The Rabbeinu Bechaya is a Spanish Parshan, dabbles in Kabbalistic thought. And what does he say? V'achot Tuvalkaya Naama. Darshu Rabotenu, Ishto Shel Noach Haita. Our rabbis explain, like we saw last week, in one opinion, this is going to be, she's going to be Noach's wife. And great fame, Al Shem Shehayu Ma'aseha Na'im V'Ne'imim. And she's called that because her ways were what? Nice and pleasant. Naama Ne'imim. V'yesh Omein, and of those who say, Shehi Haita Eshet Ashmedon, Aim Ashmedai, V'Hashedim Nogu Mina. And of those that say that she was the mother of Ashmadon, and from Ashmadon, the demons were born. All right, so she's the mother of the demons. And that's the idea that I want to look in today. It's something which is very, very far from us in the modern world. It gives a little bit of a glimpse. It's a window into a whole nother world, which I am not a Kabbalist, so I will do my best with explaining it, but clearly the way I'm explaining it, there's much deeper ways of going into the topic when you have more reservoirs of knowledge in that area. All righty, so let's go and let's see what Rabbeinu Bechaya says. The Daled Nashim Hayu Imot Hashedim. There were 4 women who were the mother of these demons. Lilith, Naama, Idrat, Umachlat. Okay, these are the names of the 4 women. ויש לכל אחד ואחד מהם מחנות וכיתות של רוח הטומאה. אין מהם מספר. And each of these women are in charge of camps and groups of what? Of ruach tumah, impure spirits and demons, which are uncountable. And the year is divided into 4 seasons, and each of these women are in control of one season. And they gather and they gather in a place, the mountains of darkness. And this is a play off. If you open up to say, if you have their Tanakhs here on the table, alrighty. If you open up to say Yirmiyahu chapter 13, Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Tet Zayin.
Can you say where again?
Yirmiyahu chapter Yud Gimel Pasuk Tet Zayin. Okay, Shnu Hashem Elokeichem Kavod. Okay, give kavod, give honor to God. B'terem yachshoch, before it gets dark. B'terem yidnakfu raglechem, and before your feet, okay, will be pushed aside. Harei Nashef, on the mountains of Nashef. Now the word Nashef in modern Hebrew, the word Neshef. What does the word Neshef mean?
Like a party.
And why is it called Neshef? And also because it's nighttime. Usually parties are at nighttime. So we see here we have the word choshech, we have the word neshef, and here we're talking about har nishpeh karov laharei choshech. Alrighty, so we have these verses which talk about the gathering, okay, about these mountains of darkness, which evil spirits can join there. Alrighty, so these 4 women, that's where their camps are. Sunset to midnight. Shlomo had control over all of these women. And to Shlomo, who was the wisest man that ever lived, he could control the demons, and to him, they were like his abadim ushvachot. They were like his what? His servants, because he had control over them. These women, nashav shel saro shel Esav. They are the wives of, who is saro shel Esav? The angel, guardian angels for each nation, and so saro shel Esav is this angel of Esav. The dugmato nasa Esav. And we see in the Torah that Esav married 4 wives. Okay, so we're adapting to Kabbalistic thought, but we're told here that there are 4 women that what? 4 women that control the demons in the world. And one of them is who? Is Naamah. Are you familiar with any of the other names here on the list of the 4?
Lilith.
Lily. Okay, so in a minute we're gonna investigate what Lilith is, who she is, and anyone else familiar to you? Where do you know Machlat?
Well, it was Machlon. Yeah,
Machlat was one of Esav's wives. After, it's if you want Breshit Perek Chafchet Pesutet, after Yitzchak sends Yaakov to the family to marry, sends him away. He really has to be sent away because Esav wants to kill him. But what does Rivka say to her husband? I don't want to marry a local girl, right? So he sends Esav Yaakov away to Haran to marry someone from the family of Rivka's family. And then what is Esav overhears the conversation, and Esav decides to marry also somebody from the family, and he marries a girl named Machalat from the family of Ishmael. Alrighty, so we know that name from the Tanakh. All right, so we have these 4 women. And I want to investigate now a little bit about Lilith, because Lilith is very much connected to the character of Naamah. What do you know about the name Lilith? If I just throw the word name.
You're not supposed to say it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So you can't tell something with Adam Arishon, the first feminist magazine, or one of the right? So why is feminism grabbing onto this woman named Lilith? Right. So all of this is connected to Naamah. Right, and we're going to see how. Alrighty, so if we start and say for Yeshayahu, we have a pasuk right here. There's a pasuk that mentions the word Lilith. So we see that the name Lilith is found in the Tanakh. We're going to start in the Tanakh. We're going to move to the Middle Ages, and we're going to see that certain ideas are anchored in the Tanakh, and then we're going to see what develops as a result of these psukim. Alrighty, so we're told in Sefer Yeshayahu, and I brought you the English translation as well. Upakshu siyim et iyim. And that means the wild goats will meet the jackals. And now I have the translation. V'sa'ir al re'ehu ikra. Their goat demons shall greet each other. Achsham hirgia lilit umat'a la manoach. And there the screech owl shall find rest. So the English translation here of lilit is what? Is a screech owl. All righty. And the Eben Ezra on our verse, Eben Ezra, the medieval commentator, writes, Ha'of sheya'uf balayla. Hey, lilit is a type of bird that flies at night. What bird flies at night? The owl. Okay. And why? What's the connection? Lilit and Laila. Okay, darkness. And Rashi on that pasuk in Sefer Yeshayahu writes, Shem Sheda. What does that mean? The name of a demon. All right. So we see from the Tanakh here, we see that this Lilith. Now, notice we have mentioned in this verse of the Lilith and also the Seir. The Seir Arehu Yikra. What is a Seir? It's like a type of goat, right? Yeah. But what do we know about the Seir? Think about Yom Kippur, Seir Azazel. In the Tanakh, the Seir is connected, seems to be connected to what? Like mystical powers or some kind of weird thing that's going on. If you open to Sefer Vayikra, Perek Yud Zayin, Vayikra Yud Zayin Zayin. So what's the prohibition here? And Vayikra Yud Zayin Zayin. V'lo yizbechu od et sacrifices, right, to the Seirim Asher Haim Zonim Acharehim. Okay, so many believe that the word here, Seirim, again, is a type of demon that they were worshiping earlier in that period of time. So we see that the word Seir also has a connotation of some kind of power or demon.
Well, we bring a lot of Seir.
So
correct.
You're demon.
You're 100%. But here in this context, notice what it says. Don't no longer bring, but they shouldn't bring their sacrifices anymore. We bring a seir to what? To sacrifice to God. But here they're bringing that sacrifice to the what? To the actual seir. Alrighty, so we see there are hints that the seir is something which was some kind of thing that they were worshiping. And so we see, and Lilith is paired with the seir. So we have this idea of some kind of power that's being worshipped. All right, so we see that from the Torah. Now let's go to the Talmudic era. Alrighty, in the Talmud, what does it say in Gemara Shabbat? That's our next source. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Asur lishan b'bayit yichidi. Okay, a man can't sleep alone in a house. The kol hayashan b'bayit yichidi achazato Lilith. Why not? Because what can happen? Lilith can grab hold of him. Alrighty, and I have here in square brackets. Lilith is said to fertilize herself with male sperm to give birth to the demons. Alrighty, so this is in the Talmud. Okay, we're not talking about some kind of source outside the Tanakh. Let's go to the next one. The Gemara Nida. What? I'm sorry.
Outside the Tanakh, it's not
Outside, right? Okay.
I don't know what was going on about the shipping and how you can't sit alone the house and how the whole that you have to go.
it's far away from our culture.
So
His grandparents believe.
No, but some say it a lot and some don't, but this is something I only heard.
My mom.
That's very
My grandfather met a friend of his who stuck out his hand, and my grandfather said to him, "I'm sorry, I don't shake hands with dead people. I'm very happy to see you." And he knew that his friend had died, and the guy actually had a twin. And that's who he met. But he was 100% sure that he was talking to this dead friend. He just didn't want to shake his hand because, like,
I'm like, he had a sheep also. Like, I don't like the sheep.
So this is very appropriate in light of the fact. Okay. You know, I really grappled. Should we go this next step in referring about Namak? Because it's very foreign to us. On the other hand, I feel like it opens our eyes to a whole world. And I think we'll
to a generation that's not one.
But also a greater appreciation for these ideas. We might accept them, and the Rambam certainly didn't accept them. We'll get a better appreciation where they're coming from. All right, and we're going to see that they're coming. Part of this is stemming from the Tanakh itself.
Well, no.
Back to the Tanakh.
Most of that. They say all the things that died, including the shaving.
Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to, so now look at the next Gemara Nida. I'm going to read it in English because the Hebrew is, Rav Yehuda said, citing Shmuel rule. If an abortion, meaning not an abortion, it's
Aborted fetus.
Miscarriage.
yeah.
If a miscarriage had the likeness of Lilith, its mother is unclean by reason of the birth, for it is a child, but it has wings, right? So this miscarriage, there's some kind of wings that this embryo, because the wings somehow they believe Lilith had control. So it was also taught, and it's in the same vein. Rabbi Yossi said it once happened at Shimoni that a woman aborted the likeness of Lilith. And when the case came up for decision, the sages, they ruled that it was a child, but that it also had wings. Right? So we see in the Gemara, there's just a case where there was a miscarriage and there was a likeness between the baby and what? And Lilith, she had wings, and that goes back to this creature that might have been an owl type of creature, right, regarding Lilith.
But it sounds like that's disagreements in the Gemara that they don't believe in, that they decided that it was a child, like even though it had wings. So-
Right. It's still a child.
It's
but
a
it had-
malformed child.
but
So
it's
they
a
don't necessarily believe in it, the demon at that point when they make that ruling, or?
No, they do believe in the demon because they see that there is some kind of something similar between this child, this embryo, and Lilith.
But then it's
So
more
it's
that
a
this
child,
specific one
It's
is
a child,
not-
but still considered a child, and therefore that has implications for Tumah Tahara and for the woman, okay, after she has given birth to this. I want to go one step further, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and have you been to Qumran? Right, okay, it's an amazing tool. And they did actually they have a lot now in the last year and a half. I saw a COVID on COVID. I saw a lot of things from different Beis Sefer Tzedek Kfar and also from Beit Abichai in Yerushalayim. And they took a tour of Qumran, and they've opened up some new paths regarding Qumran. And anyway, in Qumran, we know about the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was the most important discovery in the last, archaeologically speaking, the last 100 years, 150 years. And we know in the Dead Sea Scrolls, what they find among the literature. Some of it has to do, some of our copies of the Tanakh, okay? And that's very, very important to compare their way, how the words are written and the language in their Tanakh as compared to the books that we have in our Tanakh, the Masoretic text. And also they have their own literature that has to do with the cult that they're living there. They believe somebody they were Essenes. Okay, so what does it say in one of the Dead Sea Scrolls? And I, the instructor, proclaim his glorious splendor so as to frighten and to terrify all the spirits of the destroying angels, spirits of the bastards, demons, Lilith, howlers, and desert dwellers, and those which fall upon men without warning to lead them astray from a spirit of understanding to make their heart and their soul, etc., etc. Desolate during the present dominion of wickedness and predetermined time of humiliations for the sons of light by the guilt of the ages of those smitten by iniquity, not for eternal destruction, but for an era of humiliation for transgressions. So we see we have here the elites, those who fall upon men, which brings us back to which source?
Previous.
The one where you shouldn't sleep alone
Mhm.
in the house. Because why? Because Lilith can grab. All righty. So interesting. And the Dead Sea Scrolls date, they're before the time of the Talmud. The Dead Sea Scrolls date, depends on which document, somewhere between the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. And the Talmud was redacted in the year 450, somewhere between 450 and 600. So we're talking about an earlier time period. We have mention of Lilith and the idea for controlling. Where is this coming from? This idea?
No, Omar? Okay.
So where is this coming from? The idea of Lilith and controlling men and attacking babies. And so it seems like it comes from the way people understand Sefer Breshit and the creation of woman. Alrighty, so look at the
Just
next one.
a quick question, if it's
Sure.
okay. The songs of the sage in these Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
Does this have a name in the Sfarim Chitzoniyim, or this is strictly an Isiim Sefer?
This is just an Essene Sefer. This has to do with it's the literature of the group of the Essenes themselves, the sages of the Essenes. It's not part of the literature, the Sfarim Chitzoniyim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back. Where is this coming from? Now we're going to something really interesting that you might have never noticed before. When Chava is created, and we have this beautiful poem right that Adam says, and what does she say? Vayomer Adam, what does he say? Zot hapam, this time, etzemei atzamai, bone for bone, ubasar mibsari, and he's flesh for flesh. Mazoti kareisha, this she shall be called woman, ki me ish lukha zot. All right, notice, Zutapam, what does that mean?
Just
What
Yeah,
can we
the other
infer
time.
from there that there was
Another
another time? So look at the next midrash, Breshit Rabbah. Vayomer Hadam Zotapam. Okay, Breshit Rabbah, which is a very, very early midrash. I'll just, as a side note, it was redacted somewhere between the year 300 and 500 CE. That's an early midrash, in contrast to some others that were redacted much later, 800, 900. So what does the midrash say? Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Amar. It's Chila bar Alo. In the beginning, woman was created. And she was filled with, like when a baby's born at times, right? There's blood and there's all kinds of pus, and he was revolted by her in a sense, because don't forget they were created, and so God separates her. The Chazar ubar alo pam shnia. What does the midrash say? God then did what? He recreated her again. Zot tapam, zot tishal oto hapam. Okay, and that's why it says this time. Now, where do we get this idea that woman was created twice? First time, he's a little bit repulsed by the way she looks, and this time, he's okay.
It said Zachar and Nekeva Biraham.
And we have two versions of it.
Excellent. So it's based on the two creation stories. Okay, and we have chapter 1, woman is created, and chapter 2. And we know there are differences between chapter 1 and chapter 2, and it's here in the bottom here. Alrighty, notice chapter 1. First of all, let's look at the names of the chapter 1. Elohim. In chapter 2, Shem Elohim. Chapter 1, the order of creation. We all know it from elementary school. Vayer, Vayboker, Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, right? We have creation of water, then we have the creation of the firmament, then we have the creation of light, then we have the creation of vegetation, etc., etc., etc. And what's the pinnacle of creation? Man, right? What about chapter 2? First, we talk about the creation of man, and then we talk about Son Adam being created, and then we have the animals. So the different order of creation. So we have differences between chapter 1 and 2. And lo and behold, a main difference between the two is the creation of what? Of woman. What does it say in chapter 1? Zachar unekeva barauta, which means male and female who created them. And what do we have in chapter 2? The whole story of he puts them to sleep, right? Vayikach achad mitzalotav, and he takes from either from his side, or in the modern language we say it's a rib, but basically God takes from the side of Adam, vayiskor basar tachtena, and he closes the skin, and from there he fashions woman.
Surgery.
Right, the first surgery, right, okay?
First they were together.
Right.
Back
Correct.
to back.
That's right. So very good. So what we see here is two creation stories. And the question is, can they jive? What do we do with two different creation stories? So we're going to look at Rashi, and Rashi is the famous answer that we're familiar with. Rashi gives two answers. And for male and female, he created them. And further on, it says, and he took one of his ribs, etc. The two passages appear to be contradictory. But according to a midrashic explanation, he created them at first with two faces, and afterwards he divided them. Okay, so according to answer number 1 that Rashi brings from the midrash, they were like Siamese twins. They were connected. That's what it means, Zachar and Nekeva barauta. And in chapter 2, what does God do? The first operation, the first successful detaching of what? Of Siamese twins, and we have the actual separation of man and woman. That's how the midrash explains our contradiction. And then he goes on to say, but the real sense of the verse, the more simple explanation is, here it tells you that both of them were created on the 6th day, but it does not explain to you how the creation took place. This it explains to you in another place, meaning chapter 1 is giving you the general, the cloud. Zachar and Nekeva barautam. He created on the same day, man and woman. And then chapter 2 comes in to fill in the details. How did he create man and woman? Well, first he created man, and then he took them aside. And what does he do? He creates woman. That's the general way of explaining the contradiction. Rashi brings two different explanations, but not according to our midrash. What is our midrash saying? Oh, no. There were two separate creations. Creation of lady number 1. Adam was not happy because why? He saw the blood, whatever, because they were created at the same time, right? It wasn't really good. So then what happens? Creation number 2.
God puts him to sleep.
God puts them to sleep. Men, it's interesting. Men don't like, not all men, they don't take the sight of blood, right? Anyway, and then we have creation story number 2. Right. So according to this midrash, we have our first Eve, and we have our what?
Second.
So that they were, he said, these are not for me, as though he was looking for a mate.
That's just good. So that's chapter 2. That's chapter 2.
So that's.
So then at that point, he creates, then I guess, according to this, that's when he creates Eve number 2. After he sees that no one's for him.
But at that time, they were together.
According to the idea they were created at the same time,
Yeah.
I guess they were separated. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard to
You're right. And that's an interesting point. When it comes to Midrashic traditions, we have different Midrashic traditions and often they contradict one another. And that's okay. Not only that, but I've done a lot of work on Rashi. Rashi will often contradict himself. He'll bring one Midrash in chapter this, another Midrash, and they don't drive. But that's another question. But so Midrashic traditions often vary. So we have our first seed and we have our second seed. Let's go one more source.
First seed being little.
Okay, so that's a good point. It's not mentioned. That's going to be the next. Ready? So now let's go to the next source. All right. All right. And the next source has to do with Cain and Hevel, but it's going to link back to our story. Okay, we know that God accepts Cain's karban. We're not exactly sure what that means, how God shows that he accepts the karban, but he accepts it. And obviously, Cain was the first to bring, and he's upset. So what does the Pasuk tell us? Vayomer Cain el Hevel achiv, and Cain said to his brother, Vayhi b'yotam b'sadeh, and they're in the field. Vayakom Cain el Hevel achiv, vayohargeh. And what does Cain do? He murders them. And what's missing in our verse? What did he say? Ready? So let's look at the Midrash. What were they arguing about? So the Midrash, the Breshit Rabbah says they said, come let us divide up the world. One took the lands and the other took the movables. One said, the land which you're standing on is mine. And the other replied, the clothing you're wearing are mine. One says, take them off. The other says, get off. In the course of this, Cain rose against Hevel and killed him. That's opinion number 1. So Yehuda Safnin said, what were they arguing about? One said, in my domain shall the temple be built. And the other said, in my domain shall the temple be built, as it is stated. And when they were in the field is none other than the temple, as it is written, Zion shall be plowed as the field. Yehuda Bar Ami said they were disputing about first Eve, Chava Rishonah. Revivo said the first Eve returned to dust. What were they arguing about? Lafuna said an extra twin was born with Hevel. Do you remember last week we saw that with the word S? We saw that. This one said she's mine because I'm the firstborn, and therefore what should she get? The double portion. She should get 2. And this one said no, she's mine because she was born with me. In the course of this, Cain rose up against Hevel and killed him. All right, so there's 3 different opinions, and the Amulet is a beautiful, beautiful chapter in the book, and I see the book is here, and many of you might have gotten it for your bat mitzvah or you have it at home. I teach in a women's college, and I'm always asking them, do you have Amulet at home? And many of them don't have it anymore.
Really?
In the modern world, they're not getting it. And I feel like it is such a beautiful. Yeah. So anyways.
In our minds, everyone has it.
Okay, so Amulet. Okay, so Amulet was a tremendous Bible scholar.
I mean, I know who she
Oh,
is. But
and she wrote a series
read
of-
her.
Okay, she wrote a series of books on Parshiot of the Torah, which are crystal clear. She's very, very eloquent, and they've been translated into English, and they're beautiful set of books. So what does she say about her story? She said, what's the point of the Midrash? Something so deep. She said, Midrash is basically trying to explain what's the cause of war, a dispute in the world. Opinion number 1, land, property, that belongs to me. That land is mine. She said, what's the second motivating reason for war? Religion. And the third, she said, is women. All right. And then he has a beautiful way of looking at our Midrash. And any that our Midrash is saying one opinion is, well, who were they fighting over? Chava, Rishonah, the first Eve.
No. It's the twin.
Right. But the opinion, you're right. But they first say they were disputing about Chava Rishonah, and then they go on to say, but wait a minute, Chava Rishonah returned to dust. And then they say they're disputing over the twin. But notice what's mentioned here. Chava Rishonah, meaning there's an awareness that there was a Chava Rishonah. So we see hints in both of these midrashim to what? The idea that there was Chava Rishonah. Now, what's the connection between a woman and a field? Notice how it's all based on the words, and he and they were in the field, right? What's the connection between a woman and a field?
So get loud.
Okay, so in Sefer Devarim, we have these cases where a woman is where there's relations between an engaged woman or a married woman, and there's and the Torah differentiates between where it happens. If it happens in a city or if it happens where in a field. So some of the commentators on the Midrash say that's the connection the Midrash is making with the field, right? In any event, it was interesting. In any event, we have here mention of the first Eve. Now, and not all agree. What, according to this opinion, what happens to her? She returns to dust. We're going to see that not everyone agrees that what? That she returned to dust. All righty?
So how could they fight over if she would?
No,
That's when they bring in the twins.
that's why they bring in the twin. Meaning, no, the guy, not the guy, I'm sorry, Rabbi Eva said that she returned to dust. So they say, okay, you're right. So then they're fighting over the twin sister that they want, the extra twin.
To the
It's
wings,
still a woman.
the wings that we talked about earlier, does that imply that they're more on a like supernal level more than?
Well, they're.
I mean, returning to dust, I mean, like, okay, like they're not maybe tangible
Mhm.
anymore, but now she's.
Right, yes.
Blown away.
Yes, for sure. When we think of a demon, we think of something which you can't necessarily hold on to
Right,
or.
right.
Okay, now let's go one step further. And that is a source, the alphabet of Ben Sira, which is not part of the Tanakh. It's a latest type of midrash, a book not part of the Jewish canon. And we're talking about 8th to 10th century. Now look what it says. When the first man, Adam, saw that he was alone, God made for him a woman like himself from the earth. God called her name Lilith. Notice, for the first time, we have Adam being linked to a woman named Lilith. Until now, what have we called her? Rishona, right? They immediately began to quarrel. Adam said, you lie beneath me. And Lilith said, you lie beneath me. We are both equal, for both of us are from the earth. And they did not listen to one another. No, we're talking about 8th and 10th century. And they're reading our sources as what are they fighting over? I mean, we're talking about during the sexual act, right? Who's on top and who's on bottom? It's astounding, right? That Lilith is basically saying, I was also created from the earth. We are both what? Equal. And therefore, don't tell me where I'm supposed to be, right? Which is astounding. As soon as Lilith saw this, she uttered the divine name and flew up into the air and fled. Adam began to pray before the Creator and saying, Master of the universe, the woman that you gave me has fled. God sent 3 angels, and in a while we'll see who they are, and said to them, go bring Lilith. If she wants to come, she shall come. And if she does not want to come, do not bring her back against her will. The 3 angels went out and found her in the sea at the place where the Egyptians were destined to drown, where they grabbed her and said to her, if you will go with us, well and good, but if not, we will drown you in the sea. Lilith said to them, my friends, I know God only created me to weaken infants when they were 8 days old. From the day a child is born until the 8th day, I have dominion over the child. And from the 8th day onward, I have no dominion over him. If he is a boy, but if a girl, I rule over her 12 days. They said, we won't let go of you until you accept upon yourself that each day 100 of your children will die. And she accepted it. That is why 100 demons die every day. They would not leave her until she swore them, in any place that I see you or your names in an amulet, I will have no dominion over the child. They left her, and she's Lilith who weakens the children of men. Now notice here, Lilith, who in a sense was banished from the world before she had children, right? What is she destined to do? According to this,
Kill children.
harm children, right? And also Lilith, who complained about being on top or on the bottom, of having man control her, in a sense. Well, what does she also do? Preys on men when they're alone at night in the home. Like, notice here we have a connection between what's developed here and what we know.
The remarkable ones we've seen, we see amulets that they put on cradles.
So we're going to see.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to show you right now. Terrific. You're going to see now, okay? Now look at the next source before we look at some pictures. The Ibn Ezra, when we got to our initial source, this time, meaning there was an earlier, this woman, right? He says, the Ibn Ezra says, Zotapam, Matzati Ezer Kinegdi Kamoni, Kimimenu Haya. He says, this time means I found someone suitable. Udvar Lilith Drash. What does he say? This idea of Lilith is what? and Midrash. Now, what's fascinating, really fascinating, is where did the Ibn Ezra live? It's easy to remember, around the time of Rashi.
Yeah.
Okay, he was born 1090, all right? Living in Toledo, eventually makes it to Europe. In 1090, he equates that pasuk, Zot Tapam, where it talks about Chava Rishona with the name what? Lilith. Lilith. By the year 1000, already this connection between Lilith and Chava Rishona has already been made, because what does he say here? Udvar Lilith Drash. He doesn't say Udvar Chava Rishona, Udvar Lilith, which is interesting. Okay, which is very interesting. Okay, so now I just want to share with you. Okay, that's right.
This is why we have this whole thing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay,
Now
all
share.
right. So let's share screen here.
And just as well, the idea of Lilith being the night, and
Yeah.
Adama is the world. It's the inverse of Greek mythology, where you have Uranus as the sky
Okay,
and Gaia as the world, and it's the feminine is the world, and the sky conquers the
Interesting.
world. Whereas here we've got the opposite. The Adama is
Right.
what matters, and the Lilith gets banished, basically.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so we see here true. I can close this so I can. Okay. So we see here we have two traditions in a sense. We have one Lilith is a demon, and there's the first Eve. Right, that's what we've seen. Lilith is a demon. It's already in Sefer Yeshayahu. We have that idea of Lilith is connected with Seir.
Oh, they're not.
No,
saying?
you do. People online don't see it.
Don't see what? They don't see what I'm showing?
No, they're only seeing, because you shared this and then you did something. Hold on.
You have to share the actual presentation, not the PowerPoint.
1 second.
Okay, leave
This
this on.
is how it's.
Oh, okay. I didn't really share it. Okay.
Okay, I don't know.
Okay, great. Now they see it. Okay, terrific.
All
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
All righty.
Thank
Then the next, all right, so 1 second, I have 1 second. I'm for sure,
What?
that it doesn't show,
Animations.
yeah, animations.
Are you in presentation view?
mode?
Oh, there you go.
All the teachers know what to
Okay.
do.
All righty. So Lilith, the demon, we saw that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
Mhm.
And we also saw in the Talmud, the idea, alrighty. And then the first Eve we saw in Genesis Bereshit Rabbah. So we have these two traditions, and then all of a sudden we have them coming converging together. Lead is first Eve with the Alpha, Beta, then Sira, which we saw. Alrighty. I just want to point out that scholars really believe that this identification happened earlier.
Mhm.
We don't have sources to show it, but we saw that the Ibn Ezra already living in the year 1000, and was Ibn Ezra was he aware of the source? I don't know. He already makes that connection. All right. So let's understand a little bit. Okay. It's called incantation books. Okay, are you familiar with incantation? Were engraved. They were like sort of type. They were similar to an amulet, and they were basically buried in the ground in front of a house, and they were buried upside down. And the goal was to capture what? The demon before the demon could come into the house. And already in the year 1 in the 1st century, designated is his goal for the ceiling of the house of so-and-so there, that they are flee from him, the evil Lilith. Alrighty, and here we can see a picture of the bowl. You see that the person that picture is a picture of Lilith. Notice the things around, they're wrapping her around, like what are they trying to do? Tie her up, chain her.
She doesn't have wings.
Their hands are in the shape of wings, I was noticing, the way they're positioned
Okay,
a little bit.
alrighty, they're trying to chain her into place. And the language on these bowls are the language of divorce. You're divorcing Lilith from the house. And therefore, notice I bolded for this is the divorce written for the Lilith, that curses, which I have written for Emi, daughter of Kaki, Kaki, okay? And any name she has, when you, I don't know, when you know about a ketubah, when you're talking about a get or a ketubah, very, very important that you have all the names what that a person is called. Alrighty, and if we skip down, for I have written to you a deed of divorce, a writ of dismissal from the so any name that she has. Alrighty, so this is from a book called Corpus of Magic Bowls, from the 6th century.
And Lilith and the curse which is killing children that are hers.
Okay, so we have here one of these bowls. Okay, now this was very exciting for me to find, because this bowl, Ani kol mishvat bat machlafta ma'aziva upoteret umagaresht otach Lilith. We have a woman scribe. A woman scribe has written this bowl. So they're divorcing the Lilith from the house. It's like a divorce, and then they bury it by the front door, upside down.
You
in
read
order to
Rashi's
catch-
daughters,
Yeah,
one of the daughters does.
does this,
Yeah,
okay,
that's her
okay.
profession. She's a midwife.
and
She
also
does
this,
Mhm.
okay,
the bowls.
okay.
Do we know where
interesting.
this one is from?
Well,
Okay, so this one, the woman, her name is Dr. Dorit Kedar.
Yeah.
I was.
No, I don't mean but there, yeah,
Some
okay.
Zoom series during COVID.
Yeah, okay.
I put her name here,
She's
so you can
great.
Google her name. She's actually written a book about the bowls that she's worked on.
Mhm.
I don't have the details, but notice
I
again.
think
the
she's
picture.
Yerushalayim.
Oh, really?
I think.
Okay. It's, I think she lived this Komish Bamachat in the around the 5th century. I noticed the picture once again, you know, we have.
The wrapping around.
Yeah, the wrapping and
I think
so
her
on.
arms are positioned so she's like wings.
Yeah.
Well,
Could
we
be.
have like.
It's
Right?
like the way.
I don't know. It's so,
Seal her.
okay.
Mhm.
And now we move on to amulets. Okay, those were incantation bowls. The amulets, which people would either wear or they would hang these amulets. They would hang them sometimes. They would hang them on a crib. They would hang them on the 4 sides of the room in
Television.
order to. All righty. And look what we have here. Adam and Chava. Chutz Lilith. What does Chutz Lilith mean? Get rid of Lilith. And then we have, do you remember the story that the 3 the 3 angels are sent to what? To find Lilith and try to bring her back.
Mhm.
Now we have here 3 angels. Sanoi, San Sanoi, the San Galaf. Alrighty. And these are considered the 3 angels that protect the woman has given birth and also the children, the baby. Now, this is really interesting. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Try to find it.
At the end, I can show you the link. This is on my Google Drive if anybody wants it, because it's too heavy to send by email. But I did some research, and at the end I have my sources. Okay, I blog on the National Library, which talked about these 3 angels because I always found their names very interesting. Look what it tells us. There is a threatening vocal motif emanating from the sound of the names set together, which resembles sounds found in nature, like the hiss of a snake or the crackle of fire. The sound warns Lilith and gives her pause, making clear that she should not approach the mother and her newborn children. The repetition of these sounds, sen, san, se, sem, emphasizes the whip-like, whispering, threatening effect. Alrighty, so that's fascinating.
Mhm.
Okay,
Can I
sure.
add something? So I trained in Reiki, which is energy healing, and some of those words are like, I mean, I'm not allowed to do that part, but there's like like there's things that you're supposed to say, like almost like a spell that you do.
Right.
And some of them.
Names of the angels? Those names?
It sounds like.
Wow, wow. Okay,
Amazing.
Yeah.
that's really
This
amazing.
is weird. That's.
All right. Okay, and
That's why you're not allowed to do it.
okay, and now look at this amulet. Okay, so again, we have the names of the 3 angels, Sanoi, Santi, and San Galos, Adam B'Chava, Chutz, Lilith. All right, but now look what it teaches us. Okay, the names are surrounded by 3 frames. Do you see the square, the triangle, right? The rectangles. The first has illustrations of the birth and circumcision ceremony. The second frame consists of verses, and the third features decorative ornaments. The verses here are like Yivarechecha Hashem v'Yishmerecha and so on. Each frame, in a sense, is protection.
Mhm.
Each time it's framing it to give it more protection. So the 3 frames provide more protection. The actual graphic design provides protection. And here we can see, once again, another amulet. And notice here, it uses the name Chava Rishona. Do you see that? Ashpit alayich Chava Rishona. Alrighty. And here we have a place where you would put in the name of the person who you want to be protected.
Mhm.
Alrighty. So we see all these different amulets trying to protect the newborn. The Yoledet. Okay, now this is an early one. Okay, I found this on the National Library. This is a very, very early one. And notice the names. Sonai, Sonsini, and Senigli, which is what? A little bit different than the 3 that we've seen. Okay, what does it tell us on this bowl? We find the text written by the author, Duchtish Bat Bukhri. What do we see again? A female scribe.
Mhm.
And I'm emphasizing this because if we move from these incantation bowls to actual scribes in the medieval world, female scribes were very, very unusual.
But maybe women did specifically these kind of things.
So that would,
Because they were the
Because-
midwives.
Yeah.
right,
Or do we know for sure that they actually wrote them as opposed to dictating? Because the handwriting is very good for somebody who doesn't write much.
right. I don't know.
It could easily be that she you know.
I don't know, it has to be
in
said.
many ways the
But it
same.
would be fascinating to compare what's happening with it, because I've investigated the world of women and manuscripts. And one of the earliest, women scribes is Paula of Rome, which is well into the 1200s, and this is we're talking about way earlier. So it's fascinating.
And
Anyway,
that's the papyrus. She didn't write herself, but it's all written. It's written. Yeah.
right, you're talking about here.
Yeah. No, it's not like Bata. They're from also from Qumran, that
Yeah,
area. The papyrus were found.
So on this bowl, we find a text written by the author describing a character named Smamit, the mother of 12 sons who was killed by a brutal demon. Smamit escapes the demon and flees to an isolated mountain where she builds a fortified home. 4 guests protect Smamit from the demon. The names of them are Sanoi, Son Sanoi, and Semiglay. The names are not completely identical. The same whispering, threatening motif can be heard as well. Alrighty, and the last thing I just want to point out is this I found fascinating in Christian versions. In Christian versions of similar amulets, the assisting forces are saints. And etymologically, we can trace the changes in the names of the angels or saints, which have been evolved over the years. So since Sinoi becomes Saint Siso, San Sinoi becomes Sisnios, and San Simangalo appears as Snideres. So it's fascinating the impact. Yeah. Well,
Do we have curses using Lilith as well? That should cause a miscarriage and so on?
that I don't know.
Don't know, I have to have a
I don't
look.
know, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, if we go back to our source sheet. All right, so now we're going to go back. We're going to go back to Lilith. All righty, back to Lilith, and look what the Zohar says to us. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Imam Shel Shedim Haita.
Oh, so we're Nama.
Naama,
Okay.
back to Naama. Sorry, back to Naama. She was the mother of the demons. Oh,
Not sure how you have to do this.
I'll have to share the screen again.
No, I shared the source sheet, but I don't have to look that.
We're going to go back to it in a minute.
Okay, and you guys have your source sheet, so.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, so what does the Zohar tell us? That Naama was the mother of the Shedim, because she came from Cain. Shemimenu yatsu Shedim v'ruchot. From him emanated, we have the demons.
Mitzad meaning literally the side as the.
No,
Tzela?
a descendant of Mitzad Cain. Okay, and we saw that last week when we saw Cain had 2 wives, Ada and Sila, and that she comes from the
One of
Sila.
The Cain line.
Yeah. Vehi nitmanet im Lilith. Okay, she's counted with Lilith. Amita askira shel hatinokot. She's responsible, Naama, for the killing of babies. Amar le Rabbi Abba v'harei Amar Mar sheNaama nitmanet litzchok ibnei Adam b'chalomot. Oh, wait a minute. We see that what? She's also seems to be connected to making men have nocturnal emissions, similar to whom? Lilith, and that's why demons are created from this nocturnal emission of men. That's what she does. Amar lochein hu vadai ki hi ba'a u'mitzacheket im anashim u'pa'amin hi mo'olida mehem luchot ba'olam. All right, so she's responsible for tum'ah and all kinds of spirits that are born from men.
Generating more and more.
Yes. Ve'ata oti omedet b'tafkida letzachet im anashim. Aval Rabbi Shimon amar shehi mishtatefet im Lilith. Okay, and then we have a little. What's important is that what is the Zohar doing? He's connecting what Naama with Lilith, and her behavior is similar to that of what of Lilith. Alrighty, and if you look at the next source, which is the grandson of the Ramban, what does he say? The Naama hi kayemet ad hayom hazeh. Naama is still here. Umishkana ben rikshe yam hagadol, and she lives what? On the water, v'yotzeit v'socheket b'bnei Adam, and she plays with men. Okay, we know what that means. U'mitchamemet mehem b'chalom. Already shows she's responsible for the creation of new demons because of what happens.
She's basically the excuse.
Okay, and I want to go back to PowerPoint just for now and to show you some things particularly regarding the Lilith. Okay, so
we need to share again.
share screen. I have to do the PowerPoint.
Right.
Now I'm on the demon castle. Okay, that should be good. Okay. Okay, and if you look at this, and I think it's maybe what you were describing from the Bible Lands Museum, I'm not sure. We have an amulet here, now from the time of the Talmud, so we're early, and it actually mentions what? Naama. Okay, in this amulet, it's right, and we have mention of
Wow.
Let's see again. Yeah.
alrighty, and also we have
Saskonis.
Sanis, Sosanis, Visan, which was the earlier, sounds similar to the earlier version, right? So we see that Naama This is the earliest mention of her they found in a text in an amulet. We have her very similar to the role of whom? The role of Lilith, in this, okay, between the amulets. And here, 18th century, okay, in the 18th century, not so long ago, they exist today.
Mhm.
So in this book, which is called Refuat B'Chaim, what are we told? Hey, Mashpia ani al kol minei mishpachot ha'umot v'kitot ha'shedin v'hamizikin v'haruchot hara'im. And then we have this listing, the kol kitot agrat bat machlat v'na'ama v'zimzumit. That brings us back to where? To Rabbeinu Bachaya. That was so on the very, very beginning. Lilin, yes. Lilin, Lilitin. Alrighty, so again, we see the mention of Na'ama when it comes to Lilith, I think we will. And here we have, unfortunately, I don't know where it's a blog, but here we see Lilith with what? With wings. That was, remember in the beginning, remember the Gemara we talked about? Remember when the Gemara talked about the miscarriage and that the baby has wings, then so we see here that Lilith is they're connected, etc. Yeah, alrighty. And if we go to the last opinion regarding Na'ama, and then we finish with Na'ama, the Ramban. What does the Ramban tell us? Okay, so let's leave the idea of the demons on the side for a moment. Umidrash acher l'rabotenu shehi ha'isha hayafa hi ma'od, that she was a beautiful woman. Shemimenu tza'u b'nei ha'elohim, and through her the sons of God erred. V'hi nirmezet b'pasuk v'ayu b'nei ha'elohim et benot ha'adam. Later on in Sefer Breshit, we have this very, very strange story where the sons of man see the daughters of women, and they equate daughters of women with who? With Na'ama. Right? I just want to finish what we've done, our summary, in the following way. Right? So we were introduced to Na'ama last week, and we were told that Achot Tuvokai Na'ama, no reason given why her name is mentioned. Right? Now, I'm bringing the bullseye to summarize, not to say that the middle is correct. You know, we hit the bullseye, but for a specific reason. The first opinion that we saw was that she was a smelter of metals. Do you remember? And the reason why I'm putting it in the middle is because that links it to the pasuk, the same pasuk. To Wakaya Lotesh Kol Choresh in the Choshen. Her brother was what? A smelter of metal. And so too, this opinion is Na'ama. So bullseye meaning that in terms of context is the closest you can say regarding context, is the same verse. And then we saw the second opinion, which was she was connected with what? Music. And that's a little bit further out because it's not the same pasuk, but what is it? Pasuk before, right? Pasuk before, where it talks about Yuval, her brother, who was the father of music. That was the second opinion that we saw. The third opinion, exactly, and we saw that na'im doesn't mean just pleasant necessarily, but in biblical Hebrew, it has this idea of melodious, which is something really interesting. The third opinion that we saw was connecting it to, let's get the story of Noah later on. I put it out further from the bullseye because it's connecting us to a story in the future. And notice we're never told that Noah's wife's name is Na'ama.
Where did we discuss this? And I've forgotten it. Why they decide that Na'ama is Noah's wife?
Because we like to recite. We don't like anonymous characters in Tanakh. It makes us,
Right.
And also Noah is Cain.
Right. That's
And she is Na'im.
Mhm.
So we
It's a
it
good
was sort of
look.
made a good
Okay.
choice.
Yeah,
A
okay.
good choice. Okay. And then the fourth opinion, if you remember, the fourth opinion was the opinion of the Shadal, who was aware of ancient cultures, right? And he wrote that they worshipped Na'ama, they worshipped all of these people, and therefore, what's the text doing?
Showing that more.
Emphasizing they're not gods. What are they? They are all people born by mother and son. Alrighty, that was the Shadal, and we also saw the Malbim said that. And now we have our fifth opinion, mother of demons. And I didn't even put them only because they're ideas that you can't do out of the text. You know what I'm saying?
That text in brief.
With the tiny name had building.
Yeah.
Also, that she was from Adam when he was.
That's the thing.
Okay.
Right, but
Okay.
more Lilith and why it's Na'ama.
Okay. And the last opinion that we just noticed, and we'll talk about this story next week, is the story that she's one of the daughters of man in chapter 7. I'm just going to leave you with the question, which is Pshuto Shel Mikra? Which is the explanation of the text. And that's with a big question mark, because really, I think we see the beauty, right? The beauty of learning Tanakh, the beauty of the way our Tanakh is written, that it allows itself to be understood in so many different ways. And you might think, at first blush, you might think that, oh, this should be the most simple explanation because it's in the same verse, but not necessarily. We know that sometimes if you only look at the verse, you're seeing a very, very, very small version of and not seeing the larger picture. So this is Na'amah. You can choose the Na'amah that you want to choose. And appreciate the beauty. And like I said, the beginning of Parshat Breshit is very, very hard to grab onto. Many, many
Anyone hear the name
mysteries.
They don't believe it. It's a name. Nobody worries about
It
that.
shows the motivations behind the Hadassah,
Mhm.
fear,
Uh,
death, and the children.
Yes, yes,
Was trying to explain what was. What
yes.
that means.
Trying to control,
In a-
find control. Yes, order in the
So I
world.
wondered if Hadassah was so.
Yeah.
It was a very ancient.
Yes, I agree. I
People can say
agree.
the same about religion. If you're not religious, that's what you say about religion. So
Yeah.
it's dangerous
That's what
ground, you know.
they It's true.
If anybody wants a copy of, you can let me know. I can.
We have the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I
If anyone wants to join the WhatsApp group, you can write your phone number
Yeah.
on there. We just started it.
And then if
Oh,
any,
with the sources,
quiet,
they've
it'll
just put
only
the
be
link in the
everything
sources.
on the-
Yeah, it's all there. Okay.
everything, this whole PowerPoint is there. Okay, and I can also share with you just for a second, if you want to know what women will be talking about, if people want to know, one second, wait, 1 second, how do I?
You have to stop sharing and then start sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am. I've been, what to call it, I've been out of school for too long.
Oh, and if anyone online wants to be on the WhatsApp group, just chat me your phone number and I'll add you.
You're saying Elizabeth.
Wait, how do I stop share here?
Yeah.
How come I don't see the Zoom?
did
Okay,
it.
stop share. Okay, great. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Now I'm gonna just share the screen. Hold on a minute. I have to go into my, oh, course description. Oh, here it is. Great. Okay. Just, yeah, alrighty. So give or take, okay, give or take, but in the first semester, we'll talk about, next week, we'll talk about the daughters of man and the sons of God. We'll talk about that cryptic story, say you are my sister 3
Mm.
times in Sefer Bereshit. Why are we repeating that story? The story of the daughters of Lot. We'll talk about Rivka. Rivka is both a sister, she's a sister of Lavan, and also the daughter of Bethuel. We'll delve into the story of Rivka, Rachel and Leah, the story of Dinah, the story of Sarah Bat Asher.
Mm.
Okay, and the second semester, we'll talk about Yocheved, one class on Yocheved, Bat Paro, Miriam, who's a sister of Moshe and Aharon, Benot Yitro. We'll see perhaps something, I'm not sure about yet, but on the priest's daughter, a Bat Kohen. What does that mean in Tanakh? The daughters of Slochad, and then this cryptic pasuk in Parshat Hazinu, God's daughters, we don't have. Alrighty, so that's the syllabus.
Thank you.
And questions or,
Well, how many women are we?
yeah, and
more
the
than
really
it.
fascinating,
Yeah.
really, really fascinating aspects of it.
Brilliant.
Each story has something really. Anyone from hi, everyone at home? Anyone want to ask any questions?
Thank you
or-